Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Thursday, February the 15th, 2018. It's actually 4:06 p.m. We actually had a few minutes delay here because we had technical issues. We were trying to get us onto a new platform, trying to get over to Zoom.com, and we ran into an echo that we couldn't cancel out. So we're going to do this one back on freeconference.com and get into the happy mode. I don't know what was going on there, Wendy, but we'll figure it out some way. I don't know how.
Oh, well, maybe I'm the one who brought the glitchy energy today. I've had all sorts of glitchiness happen in my world.
Oh, no. Hey, it could have been me,
too. But, even everything... I brought it to a happy ending, so I'll talk about it in a few moments when we're ready.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, we like happy endings. I have to admit it's been an interesting day for me, too, because I've been shopping around, and in fact, you were helping me yesterday with some of the shopping around because we tried the Zoom, and we thought we were ready to go with it. And I was also doing some other checking of stuff and ran into some interesting scenarios. I won't go into all of them, but let's just say I ran into a salesman who was particularly aggressive, so it was a good opportunity to practice staying in my zone and not rising to his challenge. And I have to say very proudly I passed with flying colors. So it was a good thing.
Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to just, go with the flow, and I did. So I did. Anyway,
wins. And you got to remember, a salesman's job is to sell.
Well, he was certainly trying to do that.
So you got to give him kudos for doing his job.
He was definitely trying to do that. I will give him credit for that, yes. So anyway, there's another win today to tell you about, too. That is, we're now at 23,000 plays. We passed the 23,000 play mark just before we started doing the show today.
Awesome. I don't even know if I remember talking, and now we're at 23.
It just flies right along, I tell you.
That's so great. Love it, love it, love it.
And plus, we're going on to what I think is probably one of our favorite sections of this book that we're working on, the Law of Attraction, the Basics of the Teachings of Abraham. We're up to the creative workshop process. And that is like one of the coolest things that they even discuss in the entire book, let alone in this section. So, I mean, we're going to have a lot of good discussion on this today, I'm sure.
What?
One thing I did want to ask you, I'm kind of hesitant because you said that you were kind of having challenges or whatever today, and I'm wondering, did you have any wins you wanted to report, or should we just slide past that?
My win is the challenge that I got turned upside down.
Oh, okay.
So I was having some, plumbing issues, and I was trying to do the fixes myself, and I thought I fixed it. And then it wasn't fixed. It seemed like something else popped up. And then somebody was in the house with me, and they were watching me. And watching me makes me feel more anxious. And so I was a little bit snippy with the person in my house, and I didn't like how that felt. And then when I realized I wasn't being kind, then I said something else that was even more unkind. And it was like total law of attraction snowball effect.
Yeah.
Total. I mean, law of attraction is working 24/7, whether we know it or not, whether we're being deliberate or not.
Oh, yeah.
And this time, normally on most days I tell happy stories of how I was being deliberate and how I had the snowball effect in a positive way. But this was a snowball effect in a negative way. And I just, when I recognized, okay, I'm going down the wrong road, I wanted this to change because I got to tell you, Walt, when I don't feel good, like when something feels bad to me, it feels so exaggerated. And it's not. It's just that because I live such a happy life, that when I'm not in my happy place, it feels like the world has come to an end. I mean, it feels so
wow.
The extreme
Okay.
intensity of the negative is so powerful, even though I will tell you, I used to live in that kind of thing on an everyday basis, like the little stuff that happened today. What used to be part of my normal, and it was like barely a speed bump in my experience because I was so used to feeling bad. So now that I'm used to feeling good, when I have a speed bump like that, it's a giant speed bump, and it feels horrible. So I came up into my room to try to just, think, like, what do I do to shift out of this? This is just so uncomfortable. And in the moment, I knew that the momentum of feeling bad had taken hold, moved really fast, And, I kind of heard Abraham in the back of my head saying, just hold on for the ride. It'll be over soon.
It'll be over soon, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to kind of ride it out.
Yeah, that was exactly it. I'm like, I just got to ride it out, but what can I do to shift it as quickly as possible? And I thought, just distract, do something different. And so I happened to have been watching a different version of The Secret, and so I just, hit on and got engrossed in The Secret and what they were saying. And I would say within about 15 minutes, I went, oh, because I kind of checked back in, how's that other issue doing? And I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel so extreme anymore. And so anyway, I started feeling better, and I went downstairs and I got something to drink. And the person who was in my house, I just kind of said, hey, I want to apologize. I was just really ugly a little while ago. And, it was met with, oh, it's okay, apology accepted, no big deal. And I'm like, no, it is a big deal to me because I want to treat everyone with kindness. And by not being kind to you, I wasn't being kind to me. And it just created a really ugly snowball effect. And so, we talked for a few moments, and I have to tell you, this to me is probably the best win out of the whole thing. This is something I've known, but just to say it out loud feels so good that when you have a friend that can hear you hear you even when I'm being ugly and just say, it's okay, I don't take it personal. That is one of the most beautiful gifts you can receive from anybody. And I knew that she didn't take it personal, but I knew that she also was aware I wasn't being my normal nice self. And the fact that it was so easy to apologize, I think comes from, so easy for her to accept my apology, comes from she never took it personally. And I know the same thing for me. I don't take it personally when other people say things that are out of their character, because I'm like, we all get out of whack every now and then. And so if someone else apologizes to me, I'm like, okay, I accept it. Let's move on. And to me, that was the beauty in how things went today. One, crap happens, and it did. But I was aware of it. I implemented my protocol, which is just wait till it comes to its natural end. In the meantime, distract and find something else to feel good on. And then I went back and I apologized, and I had, I was met with such a beautiful expression of, it's all good. There's no residual negative effect, And so to me, that's not the way my life used to be once upon a time. But that's where my life is, pardon me, which is why I wanted to share it today, because that is a win, to be able to see and acknowledge how different my life is today and how I respond to things in a very different way. Mm-hmm. And, even us with the little glitchiness with trying a new platform today, I wasn't freaking out like I would have in the past. I'm like, I guess we're going to start the show late. That happens.
It happens, right? Stuff happens.
And part of my glitchiness from before when I was in a bad space, when I went to my computer, everything I touched went into the state of not responding. So, that stuff happens too. I'll deal with it later, and that's why I think we weren't able to, move through the other platform because I couldn't shut down my computer and, But fortunately, we have all these other options.
We have the backup. Hey, boom. It's great to have a backup. That's the way I look at it. I have to tell you, too, this morning in this morning's show, I was told Joel about another kind of a similar story, not really the same, but a little similar in terms of the negative feeling stuff that happened this morning. Because when I woke up this morning, I woke up really early, probably 3:30, 4 o'clock, which is pretty unusual for me. And even when I do usually wake up like that, I can go right back to sleep. Well, not today. For whatever reason, I just couldn't. So by 5 o'clock, I was saying, okay, I'm awake, I'm up, which the cats love because then they get to go outside, right? Well, I was somehow, I guess I just didn't do my normal routine, and so I didn't have my little warm-up of, positive intentions for the day. And all of a sudden, my mind just started wandering into one of the cats, Joy, getting into a cat fight. Now, Joy hasn't been in a cat fight in at least 6 months, maybe 12 months. I can't remember the last time it was. And it was with a stray cat in the neighborhood, a Tom, who just tries to basically take ownership of the entire neighborhood. And Joy's a fixed cat, but he takes exception to that. So, you can't have my home, So but we hadn't seen this cat for months. It'd been a long time. Well, within 10 minutes of putting him outside, he got into a cat fight. And I'm sure it was with the same cat. I'm just 100% sure of it. I'm thinking to myself, Walt, you know the law of attraction better than that. You know you can't keep focusing on that stuff. Just stop doing that. So now I had to go deal with the cat, right? So, okay, it's pitch black out. And, okay, I need a flashlight. Okay, go where the flashlight is. There's no flashlight. The flashlight isn't there. So now I'm getting upset, right? And I'm pounding around the house, and I'm waking my wife up. She's asleep. I was like, Joy's been in a fight. I need to find a flashlight. Where's the damn flashlight? And I kick something with my shit, like, oh, no. It's like one thing after another. It was funny. Finally, and in the midst of that, in order to stop the cat fight, because I couldn't see what was going on, I just stepped outside and said, stop! I just yelled it really loud. And, of course, as soon as I did that, the cats just scattered. And I found out later, Joy actually ran up a tree. He was just so terrified, and the other cat disappeared entirely. Never saw him. So anyway, after all this, we finally found the flashlight. I go outside and get Joy down from the top of the tree. He's fine. He was not in bad shape at all. It was a bit of a concern because this cat had previously injured him, and he had developed an abscess and had to get surgery. So I just wanted to make sure he was okay. And he was. He was great. But it was just kind of a reminder that you want to be careful about what it is you focus on because, oh, my God, LOA reacts quickly. Oh, boy.
And especially when you're unaware that you just thought something that could take you down a negative path.
Yeah.
Because you weren't even resisting that negative thought.
No.
Because you weren't even aware that you were really thinking it. And then, boom, things just start flowing and going. Oh, it's really hard when the snowball is building momentum.
One thing it does do, though, is it gives you one more reason to just, gain the discipline over your mind, right? So that your focus is always exactly where you want it to be. And this helped me to do this. Like, okay, snap that focus right back there because I don't want to be in that other zone. That's not a good place to be. That is not fun at all. And I think, actually, that set me up for the salesman. Remember I told you about the salesman who contacted me? And it was somebody who I'd gone to one of these conference sites because I was testing out softwares, and this one they wanted to have a credit card, and they wanted the credit card before I did the testing. They'd give me a trial, but I had to give them the credit card first, and I don't like that approach. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I just kind of left it alone. And then he just started coming after me because I had already given him some of the information at that point, and so he's trying to call me, and he's emailing me and all this, and like, whoa, oh my goodness. But that experience this morning reminded me, okay, just stay in a cool space there. And he would send me stuff, and I actually probably normally would have just stopped responding. But he started going on about how he had heard the podcast and that I was doing a terrible job with the law of attraction. And so I responded a couple more times. No, he was really coming at me. I mean, just amazing what he was doing. And I was kind of amused by it, actually, more than anything else. So I kind of went with it a couple times, and I sent him a couple of emails and basically said, okay, I'm done. And he sent me more. And finally, I just set it up to go to spam. I mean, to heck with this. I wasn't going to deal with it anymore. But it was great because what happened this morning reminded me, stay focused. So when this guy was coming at me, and he was coming at me pretty fiercely, I was saying, okay, well, I can see you got a problem, but I'm not buying into it. It's just not for me. Thank you very much. Next.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I guess I'm really shocked that in the midst of a business dealing, he went to a personal attack process.
Yeah, it was pretty aggressive. It was very aggressive. He even he was accusing me of being negative, and the thing that I responded to him with, the little bit that Abraham says, I think it's in this book, I think it's later on in the book, where they say that if somebody is pointing fingers at you and so forth and it feels bad, what's really happening is that they're talking about themselves and they don't realize it. So I basically just cut and paste that and put it into an email and send it to them. It was a nice, simple way to deal with it, right?
No, wait, you're saying you did or you wished you could?
No, I did. I actually did. I actually did. I actually sent that to him. And I don't think I've actually heard from him since. Like I said, I set it up so it would go to spam, so I'm not even sure if I did. But I don't recall. Actually, I did kind of peek at the spam just in case to see if something had shown up there, and I didn't see it. So I think maybe that kind of kept him away.
So if that gentleman is listening to our show now or in the future,
yes.
Let's just put this out for both him and everybody else. You and I, Walt, we are a work in process. All of our co-hosts, we're all works in process.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're using law of attraction, in the best way we know how, but there's not one person on the planet that is going to understand every little nuance in a perfect way for us to express it.
No, of course not.
We're sharing what we can, and I share the things that have worked in my life. You're sharing the things that work in your life, and buyer beware. In other words, if you have ears to hear what we're saying and you resonate with it, then go for it. Let that be a good thing. And if it doesn't, that's okay, because you're not a match. So what are you doing listening to us?
Exactly, yes. That was what I was wondering. But, hey, we're happy to have him as a listener if he wants to listen,
But, that is an interesting point, because if somebody's not a match to what we're saying, but they're hearing it and getting upset by it, what is it that causes a person who's not a match to stay connected?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I know a partial answer, because the guy, everything about his whole approach was aggressive. His whole approach was an aggressive approach, and overtly aggressive, always coming at you. So I can see somebody like that, they run into something and they don't like it, or they want to change it, or they want it to be something different, so they just keep coming at it. It's part of a habitual thing. Well,
the idea that came to me, because what you said could definitely be it, but here's another idea, which is, and I've been in this place before, where I feel like no one understands. If I'm in a space of no one understands me, and I keep focusing on no one understands me, I'm constantly looking for someone to understand me. Mm-hmm. But because of my chronic attention to no one understands me, then I will continually find things that disagree with me.
Yeah.
So in a way, we can be a match for individuals who, when they hear us, get ticked off by us if they are habitually focusing on what they don't want.
There's another way I can express that. There are some people who feed off of negative energy. I can think of a perfect example of it. The president. President Donald Trump has a long-standing habit and policy of putting out negative energy so he can get negative energy back, and he thrives on that. It's pretty clear he really enjoys that. It gets him up. It's where he gets his drive from. And he's just one example. There are other people that we've all run into who are like that. And they can be disconcerting. They can be frustrating. But when you understand what they're doing, all you have to do is just stop paying attention, and it just takes the wind out of their sails.
And now, remember, I don't listen to much politics, so I could be speaking out of turn, but I would venture to guess that when he says something negative, he doesn't view it as negative.
I'm sure you're right.
Because I watched him on every season of The Apprentice and The Celebrity Apprentice. I really liked that show. And so I actually came to see him as a kind man who has a big heart. I know you're probably gulping, but...
Well, I'm just wondering where you're going with it.
Well, but even when he fired someone, it's like he would fire someone, then afterwards, there would be just a few moments of chit-chat with his advisors. And you could tell, it's like sometimes he's like, I really didn't want to, but this person left me no choice. And so I kind of came to see him as a person with a big heart.
Okay.
So I saw him very differently. And then when I saw him in the political arena, and him, running in the primaries and then running for president, I kind of saw an extension of the same man that I saw on The Apprentice.
All right.
And I definitely could see why people would see him in a negative light. I mean, I wasn't so stupid that I couldn't see that end of it. That just was not my perspective, because that was not the character that I had known for over a decade by watching him.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm like, yeah, that's where he's rough around the edges is kind of how I saw it. And I will still say he's rough around the edges.
And
but
I
anyway,
have to say, I don't
my
pay
point.
attention to him. I don't actually watch him. I've never watched him on TV. I didn't watch him all. I mean, literally, I didn't pay any attention hardly at all to last year's election. Everybody else was practically pulling their hair out, depending on which candidate they supported. And I just wasn't even. I mean, I looked at the polls occasionally. And that was it. I was done. Just not interested. So the only real exposure I've had to him is watching, reports on like what the various tweets are that he puts out, or he has one person who's in his favor one day, and the next day that person's in the doghouse, and then the third day he's back in his favor again, and the comments that he makes as he goes back and forth it's like you get whiplash when you follow it.
Well, but back to the point that you had made, there are some people that just feed on negativity.
Oh yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that the people who feed on it know that they're doing it. But you and I, as outsiders, get the sense, gosh, they're just feeding on it. But from law of attraction perspective, well, what is it that's really going on? And I would venture to guess that in most cases it's because they're focusing on what they do not want, so they keep getting more of what they do not want. And now they have more reason to complain about this thing that they don't like because it's what they do not want.
And I would take it a step further and say that even though they don't want it, they have in some way convinced themselves they do want it. They have convinced themselves that it's not negative. They've convinced themselves that it's,
right,
I don't know, fair game, or it's, fair play, fair conversation, whatever you want to call it. But what others are calling deeply negative, they're saying, what are you talking about? Which shows that, perspective is everything, because what is negative and positive? Positive is what you like, negative is what you don't like. Positive is what feels good, negative is what feels bad. And one of the reasons we come here into this contrast, right, this physical life, is so that we get to make our own choices and then live a life according to our choices. So there are people, we talked about this a couple of days ago, I think. There are people who come into this life choosing war. They like war. They like that. I mean, they'll never admit it quite in those terms, but they live for it, and they get it, and they thrive on it, and they keep going with it. They're saying, yes, 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 I like this lifestyle. I like this energy. I like the adrenaline rush. I like the feeling of being, whatever it is I am in the course of pursuing this. It just goes to prove different people have different evaluations of what's positive and what's negative. It's just a question of what you feel like resonates with you. Now, personally, I can't really resonate with that, but that's why I'm different from them. That's all.
Well, and I know that I had talked maybe a week or so ago about watching Waco, the story of David Koresh.
Oh, right,
and
right.
I had watched like a bunch of them in a row, and then what I didn't realize is that there was a 6-part series that was actually kind of a movie. And it was based on the story of, I think it was the negotiator, the FBI negotiator. And so I think last night I watched, maybe it was episode 3, and it was fascinating to me because based on what you're talking about, some people really like certain things that you and I might think like negatively upon. Mm-hmm. But it's like all the different players in that whole, David Koresh scenario, it's like even within the FBI and the ATF, some of them wanted to be benevolent and kind and try to find a peaceful resolution. Others were kind of trained, like as in military-type SWAT training, and because they're so trained in that, this is just my guess, but I personally wouldn't want to be a SWAT person. But somebody who trains for that and lives in that energy where in order to be effective and be successful, you have to be ready to pull the trigger when your superior says go.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
And, there was a scene where one of the guys from the Branch Davidian, he kind of was going against what David Koresh said. He actually walked out of the compound carrying a dead body wrapped up in a sheet. It was one of the victims, and it was his wife's father. Mm. And his wife just so wanted the father to be buried under this one particular tree. Mm-hmm. And everybody inside the Branch Davidian said, no, you can't do that. You can't leave the place. But in his heart, he wanted to do right by his wife. Mm-hmm. And so the next thing you know, he's dragged the body out, and of course the ATF and the FBI, they're like, oh my gosh, someone's coming out, he could have a bomb, and they were all like, going crazy. And there's a sniper guy. You could see him getting ready to shoot. And meanwhile, the negotiator is saying, no, he's just burying one of the dead. He's not doing anything wrong. And they're like, yeah, but it could be a bomb. We don't know what's under that sheet. And the negotiator had such a big heart, he said, don't shoot. Have your men stand down. Mm-hmm. And the guy who has him in this crosshair says, I've got the whatever the phrase is, like I've got the beat on him.
Right.
Give me the word. And oh my goodness, the guy who was his supervisor, he was the one who he kind of liked the idea of stirring things up, because that's what the conversation was prior to that. Like, let's stop being so kind and compassionate. We need to show them action, because they're only going to take us serious if we have leverage on them, and we need to do something with action. And so, kind of in a last moment, he says to his guy who has him in the crossfires, he says, stand down. Don't take the shot. Stand down.
Oh, good for him. Wow.
And then you see the young kid who was burying the body, buried the body and then put this wooden cross over his grave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the ATF and the FBI were like, oh, okay, I guess it really was him trying to bury one of the dead. But, it kind of reminded me of what you're talking about. It's like we have people in all different walks of life that get their sense of value by doing different things.
Oh, yeah.
And, if you're a SWAT expert, I would imagine that if you get the kill, then you're good at your job. You get promoted.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And I find that fascinating. And I don't make that guy wrong, for choosing that as a profession. But, wow, it's just not the way I live.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I just think, I'm still in like half of the Waco programming. And because, my interest is in how people think, I'm just fascinated by all the different viewpoints of all the different people involved.
Oh,
I mean, there's like a different viewpoint literally for every single person who was involved, including the people inside the Branch Davidian compound. There was strife going on there. There was love going on there. There was sweetness and tenderness. And then there was ugliness. There was all sorts of stuff because everybody has a different viewpoint.
In fact, it's even included in the reporting of what happened during that whole, I don't remember how much time it was, but that whole period of time. Depending on who was doing the reporting, the energy was completely different.
Of the holdup.
Was that what it was, 51 days?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the media outlets, you could look at 5 different media outlets and get 5 different pictures of it because everybody had a different perspective, which is always the truth anyway. I mean, there are going to be people who will say, well, there's only 2 sides to it, and you're either for or against, so that's how we'll measure it. But there's not a whole lot of nuance in that one. And, well, that kind of reflects their viewpoint, too, when you think about it. This whole thing about what we focus on, I mean, what you were describing there, as you were describing it, I was thinking about the vibration thing, right? Because vibration is a kind of way of describing what happens to all these thought patterns. And here we have all these thoughts, these different perspectives, these different levels of positivity and negativity and feeling good, feeling bad, and so forth. And they're all flying around I don't know if there's such a thing as a joint vortex, but if there is, they were all flying around this joint vortex. And you can almost see them like colliding and flying and bouncing off each other and so forth. And that's kind of like a metaphor for what was happening in what we might call the real world. And I'm struck by the fact that we who study the law of attraction and study the science of deliberate creation are trying to teach ourselves and help each other to learn how to change our perspective on what is to what we want it to be. And I'm thinking, imagine what happens if you have a whole bunch of people in that Waco scenario who are all people trying to change what they saw as what is in their minds into what they wanted it to be. I don't know how that changes the dynamic. I know it changes it in some way, but I suspect that what happens is you get a whole bunch of people very clearly defining what it is that they want and doing it publicly in many cases. And you end up with a bunch of people who have different goals, different things, different objectives that they're trying to achieve, different outcomes that they're hoping for. And then I just kind of imagine like a play being played out where you have these characters interacting as, well, this person wants this to happen, that person wants that to happen. And ultimately what Abraham teaches us is if we stay true to our own thought process, we don't get affected by what the other person does. So I imagine what the result is that each person in some way or some form gets what they're looking for in that deliberate creation form, because we know that when they're doing it non-deliberately, they're getting what they're not looking for, what they're putting out there unintentionally. Well, I think it becomes even more interesting when they're all doing it intentionally. And I suspect it becomes even more harmonious when you do it that way. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my...
Well, and David Koresh himself had prophesied that he would be killed by the government. And he had part of the training of all of the people behind the walls of, Mount Carmel, the people in his compound. They were all preparing for an end time, and they knew that there was a distinct possibility that it could end in their death. So, in a way, yes, as human beings, we desire to live. That's part of our instinctual beingness. But I think what was being overridden, that was being overridden by the continual teaching that to die for this very important cause that they felt was very, very essential, to die for that cause was a good thing. And better to die for that cause than to live betraying that cause. And they saw leaving the compound as a betrayal. So it's fascinating to see how all of their predominant thoughts, played into the whole thing. Because I got to tell you, at least from how it's being portrayed in this movie, and I really do remember this going down. I kind of followed it a lot because I was very interested in cults. There was kind of more people on the side of things going down the way they did because there were only a handful of people that wanted a peaceful resolve. I mean, David Koresh and all the people inside of his compound wanted a peaceful resolve, but simultaneously they kind of had a double bind because they believed in the possibility of being martyrs for their cause.
Yeah, that's true.
You have all the Branch Davidians who are ready to die for their cause, and the ATF who they just want this thing over. They think, this has gone on long enough, and we need to just make this end, even if it's in a violent way. And there was only a small handful of FBI people who were trying to actually bring about a peaceful resolve. So when you look at it from just the math, the number of people that wanted to see and were willing to see all the people in the compound die far outweighed the people who wanted to see them live and have a peaceful resolve.
Well, I'm also struck by whenever I hear the word prophecy, it has gotten to the point where I expect the following words to follow the word prophecy, and that is self-fulfilling. I've gotten to the point where I really do believe anytime that somebody prophesies something, they are already, through the law of attraction, in essence, setting things up for it to self-fulfill. And so I'm wondering how much of that was happening with Koresh. Because, like you said, Koresh really did believe he was going to be martyred by the government. Well, if you really do believe that, it sounds like he made it true.
Yeah, it's like, in a sense, he declared it very early on in his, quote, ministry.
Yeah.
But that was out there, and he made that publicly known.
Yeah.
It wasn't a secret. So those who came to follow him kind of knew, in a sense, what they were getting into. I doubt that's what they focused on, but, they knew that was one of the possible consequences.
That's the thing. We never really know what people focus on. The only thing we ever really know about is what we're focusing on. And if we share it with others, then they have some idea what we're focusing on. But ultimately, we're the only ones who really know what we're focusing on. That's the thing that has really struck me.
And that's if we're paying attention.
That's if we're paying attention, right?
Exactly.
We're doing it deliberately.
We may not even know what we're focusing on. So Walt, here's the new one. The only entity that knows what we're truly focused on is the law of attraction.
Well, our inner being knows.
Yes.
I guess our inner being is part of us, though, isn't it?
But law of attraction always knows what we're focused on because it's law of attraction's job to match what we're focusing on in our vibrational broadcast to that which matches it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't tend to anthropomorphize law of attraction. I just think of it as like law of gravity. It's just something that is. I don't really think of it as a being. But, yeah, you could express it that way. I think that's accurate. Yep.
Well, sometimes I think of the law of attraction as the universal manager. That's where I anthropomorphize it a bit.
So you imagine...
That's a fun word, by the way.
Which one?
Anthropomorphizing.
Anthropomorphizing, yeah, I like that one. That's one that'll win you a game of Scrabble.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, are you kidding? There's no way I'm going to be able to spell it. I can barely pronounce it.
Well, while Wendy's looking up anthropomorphizing, we should actually go on to the book.
All right. Well, let's give it a whirl, see how much we can do. But we may have to, whatever we're going to talk about today may need to extend into tomorrow.
There's a lot to talk about on this subject, so that's quite possible. I mean, we're looking at something that's really only 2 pages plus a 1-page introduction, so it's fairly short. But you're right.
You said that we were on Abraham's creative workshop process, but I'm looking in the book, and where we left off yesterday, we're really on how can I increase my magnetic power.
We are, but when you read how can I increase my magnetic power, what you find out is it's actually an introduction for Abraham's creative workshop process. And that's why I named it that way.
I don't read ahead.
There you go. So let me read the introduction, okay?
Okay, let's do it.
So what it says under how can I increase my magnetic power, it says the thoughts that you think without bringing forth the feeling of strong emotion are not of great magnetic power. In other words, while every thought that you think has creative potential or a magnetic attracting potential, the thoughts that are thought in combination with the feeling of strong emotion are the most powerful. Now, certainly the majority of your thoughts then have no great attracting power, except when you're thinking that the cat's going to get into a fight. But other than that, no great attracting power. I lost my point. Where am I?
They are more or less maintaining.
Oh, there they
what
are.
You have already practiced.
I couldn't find the line.
Last sentence.
You should read. You're actually finding the line better than I am. Okay, so, and so, can you not see the value of spending 10 or 15 minutes every day deliberately setting forth powerful thoughts that evoke great, powerful, passionate, positive emotion in order to attract certain circumstances and events into your life experiences that are to your wanting? In parentheses, we see great value in that. Here we will offer a process by which you may spend a little bit of time every day intentionally attracting into your experience the health, vitality, prosperity, positive interaction with others, all the things that make up your vision of what the perfect life experience would be for you. And that will be a changing thing, friends, for as you intend and receive, you will not only receive the benefit of that which you have created, but you will also receive a new perspective from which your intentions will be different. And that is what evolution and growth are about. And that's a really good point, because we often think, as we're trying to become deliberate creators, I have to come up with all the answers right now. And we don't remember that once we manifest that stuff, we're in a new place where we get to start putting out new requests and manifesting new stuff. And it's an ongoing experience. And every time that we move along that path, we have a different perspective.
If you don't mind, I'd like to read the last paragraph again, just because I kind of got lost in the wordiness of it and didn't really catch on to some of the juice.
Well, then you read it. Let's see if it makes more sense when you say it.
Okay. Here we will offer a process by which you will spend a little bit of time every day intentionally attracting into your experience the health, vitality, prosperity, positive interaction with others, all of the things that make up your vision of what the perfect life experience would be for you. Okay, so far what I'm getting is I'm going to focus on, all the goody things that I really want. Okay, so then there's this next paragraph that I'm not quite sure about. And that will be changing things. Okay, that will be a changing thing. Okay, so that's telling me that the things that I desire now is kind of a moving target, because as we live life, we start to get clarity about other things that we want. So whatever we start with today that we think we want, by tomorrow or the next week or next month, could actually have shifted. That's what I'm getting so far.
Yep, I agree.
For as you intend and receive, you will not only receive the benefit of that which you have created, but you will also receive a new perspective from which your intentions will be different. That's the part I'm a little bit lost.
Oh, okay.
You will receive a new perspective from which your intentions will be different.
And to me, that makes a great deal of sense because
Does that make to you?
If I have gone through the process of asking for some stuff and the stuff shows up, I now have, I've received it, right? And hopefully I've spent time celebrating that it showed up the way I wanted it to. But more than that, because that has shown up and I've played with the clay of it, so to speak, and I've got my hands dirty and messed around with it and had fun and did whatever it was that was involved with whatever it was I was trying to attract, then the next question becomes, okay, well, what's next? And at that point, whatever the what's next is something that, again, we're putting out new intentions, new requests, new thoughts, but we're doing it from a slightly different perspective. We're doing it from the perspective of whatever we have learned and developed and grown from through the process of what we previously requested and received. Each step along the way, we learn stuff. That's a lot of what we talk about when we tell our stories here on the program. We talk about the various things we learned along the way. That's why the journey is so important. Well, part of the journey is as we move along the path, we have an evolving perspective, and that perspective, as it evolves, changes. It starts to alter, starts to change. Thank goodness. I mean, you were talking earlier about, earlier in your life when you were always so negative, and I certainly had my very negative time in my life where everything coming out of my mouth was negative. And I can tell you, between then and now, my perspective has changed radically. And yes, I have changed it deliberately, but it has also changed because of what has happened each step along the way. Every step along the way, there was a change. There was a slight improvement in that perspective until finally I got to the point where I am today, where my perspective is much better than it was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
I agree with what you're saying. And this could be me in my own personal way of how I say things. Just the last couple words just really kind of throw me. I understood everything you said. Totally agree that as we set something in motion and as we receive what we've been asking for, sometimes we get stuff or a response, not exactly what we thought. We like it better, or it could give us clarity, like, ooh, what I thought I wanted is not exactly what I wanted. And I get that, and that sentence is, that is what evolution and growth are about, which I'm all about that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think just sometimes when they word things in a certain way, it just doesn't click for me.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Abraham.
I mean, this stuff is dense, let's be perfectly honest. The way Abraham's stuff is written is pretty dense. And sometimes, you're the expert. You're the one who takes every single DVD disc that comes to you and plays it 3 times to make sure you got absolutely everything out of it you can get. You only do that because it's so dense,
Well, and so one of them I was listening to the other day, they were saying something in the hot seat, and they said, "You're getting us, right?" And he went, "Yes." And I was saying to myself, "I don't get it. I don't know what you're talking about." Which is why I kept going back and re-listening to that one track, and I'm like, honestly, I'm just getting hung up on them using words that don't have any meaning to me, because what I recognize, is that there's a lack of thought. Their information is being filtered through Esther, and Esther uses her vernacular. She uses how she sees the world. And I know this is really dumb, but I've never had this thought before. But I was thinking, you know what? If I had an opportunity to be friends with Esther, we would not be friends. Not that I would dislike her, that she disliked me too much. And she puts together is not how I put thoughts together, which really fun is not what I find really fun. Anyway, that's just a side note. But I was thinking how, Abraham is being delivered through her filters. And so when she's saying, "Do you understand? You're following me, right?" That means, are you following the way I said this? And for me, it's like, I'm not following. I listened to it multiple times and went, you know what? Abraham will say it again. It'll come through Esther in a different way, and I'll get it then. And I'm like, I'm ready to move on. I got most of it. And just like with this paragraph, I got most of it. I just got lost in one teeny little part. So, I say that because I don't buy everything Abraham says, hook, line, and sinker. Like, I totally get everything. It's not that I'm even in disagreement. I just don't get it.
Yeah, sure.
I get a lot, not everything.
Honestly, it's kind of like what's happening with free conference right now, because we're having to use the free conference as the backup because of the little glitch we had with the echo on Zoom. And right in that, during that last passage where you were doing that, we were getting some of those drops. So some of your words, I mean, we could follow what you were saying, but some of your words were kind of dropping. And I thought it was funny as you were saying, sometimes I don't get all of it. Well, I was about to say, yeah, we aren't getting all of it either.
It's kind of perfect, isn't it?
Different kind of reason, but still. It was funny.
Oh, how funny.
But yeah, it's a funny thing about Abraham's way of talking. And we always have to remember, you're right, it is Esther who's doing the talking, because she's basically translating these blocks of thought that Abraham is giving her. And more kudos to her for being able to do that. She's gotten really good over the years at doing it. But, that's got to be hard. Because it's not like they're speaking English to her, They're speaking vibrationese, whatever that is.
Exactly. It's all energetic vibration. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I'm going to, you and I do it. Most of us are doing it, and we just don't acknowledge it. Because whenever I get an impulse or an awareness from my inner being, I translate it into words. It doesn't seem like difficult.
It can be different, though. It can be difficult. It just depends on. Well, it depends on one's own frame of reference, really, because we all understand even just English language through our own frames of reference. And when you take into account the fact that English is a multi-valued language, that there are homonyms. The words sound the same, but they mean different things. And then there are words that's the same word, but they mean different things in different contexts. And that then you have all the words that don't actually mean something. They're more representative, or they're metaphorical, or they're idiomatic, or something like that. And you add all that together, and then add in the fact that people have different perspectives anyway. There are times that people who speak English can't understand other people who are speaking English because they're just not on the same wavelength.
But I'm only referring to when I receive information from my inner being, it's always filtered through me.
True.
I always filter it through my understanding, so exactly. I don't have to deal with words that have two meanings.
Right.
No, it's just I filter it through me. And I was wanting to acknowledge that we receive in a similar way to Esther more often than I think we give ourselves credit for or have awareness of.
Yeah.
Because anytime you get, we were born to receive guidance and impulses from our inner being. We knew when we came to planet Earth this would not be a difficult thing, because we would always have a guide, which is the other part of ourselves, our inner being, to help us navigate this life. And so that inner being speaks the language we speak. In other words, our inner being speaks vibrationally, but we actually do know how to interpret vibration because we do it on a regular basis. Whether you know law of attraction or not, every time somebody gets a gut instinct to turn left instead of right, they're interpreting vibration.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I especially began to appreciate that when I very recently read some passage of Abraham's, I can't remember which one, that said that all emotions that we get are messages from our inner being. And when I got that, when I finally comprehended that, I realized, wow, we really do get a lot of information that we may not realize consciously we're getting, but we get it and we interpret it. And we interpret it, correctly or incorrectly, depending on how we're feeling about it, but we do get it. Which is fascinating.
Yeah. I overall, we as human beings are so much more connecting with non-physical, but we don't always see it that way or think of it that way or interpret it that way. And so like if somebody is on their first day of hearing about law of attraction and wanting to use it, and maybe they're listening to you and me right now, they'd be like, holy cow, that's an awful lot of stuff to figure out. I don't know how to do that. And I want to say, but you're probably already doing it.
Yeah, right.
You just aren't aware of it.
This is true.
You know, I mean, almost every client I've ever worked with, I look for what things they've already accomplished in life or they already feel really good at and are proficient. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, you've already got the skill built that you're looking for. You did it in your career, and you just didn't see it in terms of relationship. But it's the same skill set. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of walk them through a bridge and, to bridge the gap and let them see how they can use the very same things they do in their career and how they became so successful. They can use those same skill sets in their relationships. It's just they never thought of it before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, perspective is everything, right?
Yes. So I just think there's a lot of things that we are much more proficient at than we're even aware of. And then when you start to ask some questions of yourself, you find out, oh, I know how to do that. Oh, I've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I get gut impulses. My intuition's working. I know stuff that I didn't know I knew.
Yep.
And then when you go, that's your inner being talking to you. It's like, huh, really? Well, son of a gun.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
I guess I do hear my inner being.
So it turns out all those times when I thought there was no answer coming back, there was. I just wasn't looking in the right direction. It was there.
Coming. Sometimes, you know what, that's a great point, Walt, because sometimes I believe most of the time we get the answer, but because we don't know what to be looking for, we dismiss the answer.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it didn't come the way we thought it would show up.
Exactly, yeah.
Like yesterday's show, I talked about one of the validations that I got from my inner being was seeing a truck. Another validation I got was seeing a newspaper stand of newspapers. Now, I knew what to look for. Like when I saw those, I didn't just go, whatever, big deal. I saw a truck and some newspapers. I immediately had an awareness, like, oh, those are responses to questions I've been asking today. Mm-hmm. I was asking for validation about Project X, and those two things that came into my focus, boom, that let me know everything's well, I'm moving in the right direction, keep going. Somebody else might just go, I saw a truck and some newspapers, what does that mean?
Yeah, right, which is probably what most people would say, actually.
But to me, it was very significant.
Yeah, well, and given what it meant to you, that actually makes sense. It really comes down to whether or not something means something to you, doesn't it?
That's the reason why. Well, that's the reason why I believe my inner being pointed those things out to me, because those things do have meaning to me.
Yeah, precisely. Otherwise, the communication would be lost, as it so often is.
Yep. Like, I know I've said this before, but I thought it was so interesting that when my sister was going through a personal hardship, I was driving to meet her, and I saw this billboard, and it just said, "Stop the drama."
Ooh, I like that.
It so caught my attention because, normally I'm just driving. I'm not paying attention to the billboards. I see them, but I don't really see them. But this one was so significant because it so perfectly tied into what she was experiencing. And when I said, oh, my gosh, Jen, I got to tell you, I just saw this billboard. This is a message for you. And it was stop the drama. And she was like, oh, wow. And here's the fascinating thing. She and I have both looked for that billboard since, so we've never been able to find it.
Oh, that's
so for all I know, the next day that billboard expired and another message was plastered over it. But I'm like, couldn't find it again.
Well,
but
really
I saw it as clear as day.
Well, it'd be really funny. It'd be really funny if that billboard was due to expire the day before, but they forgot to take it down because the universe wanted to make sure that you saw it.
It was there when I needed it.
That's right.
I spoke it to her. She understood its meaning. I understood its meaning. And it actually gave us a sense of direction for the next couple of days. It was very significant. So, I know that our inner beings can speak to us through anything. But the significant part of that is not that it was on a billboard, but that my attention was focused on that billboard. Like I feel like I was guided to turn to the left and stare at that billboard at that particular time. Whereas normally, I was on the phone talking to her as I was heading to meet her. We were so engrossed in our conversation, it would have been really easy to have not noticed that billboard. But I believe my gut instinct had me look. I mean, I didn't even know I was looking until I looked, and I knew that that was a significant billboard. I knew that the message was guidance for us.
It reminds me of the story that my wife has told a number of times about how she was at her brother's house in Rhode Island visiting, and at one point during the day, she lost track of him and wanted to talk to him about something or ask him something, and couldn't find him. And it's not a really big house. I mean, it's a decent-sized house, but it's not a really, really big house. But she was checking out all the rooms, and she couldn't find him. So she said, well, okay, I'll go upstairs then. And they have a small upstairs, 2 small bedrooms for the boys up there. And she goes to the bedrooms, and he's not up there. And she just kind of says to the universe, says out loud, "Where's Paul?" And the television that's on, that says, "He's in the basement." So she goes down to the basement, and there he was.
When Louise heard the TV say he's in the basement, did she take that as guidance?
She did. Yeah, she tried the basement. She hadn't thought of the basement.
Good for her. That's funny. And to me, that's so apropos how I've experienced and speaks to us.
I'm learning it. It's what it's been like for me, because I've had to kind of overcome some prejudices about it and learn to trust stuff that's coming to me and learn to believe that I actually am getting it. But I'm getting it. I'm getting there.
Not just about a little differentiation. For people who have different belief systems or religious belief systems. I would say what today I'm calling my inner being. When I was practicing Christianity, I called it the Holy Spirit. I would have called it God speaking to me. And that's why I think it was kind of easy for me in a way to hear the voice of my inner being, because I'd been practicing listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit or God speaking to me many, many years ago. So, even my belief systems, my religious structure has changed. I think that small boy within us be named go by multiple different names, but the voice is still the voice. The guidance is still the guidance. The intuition, and I still believe it all comes from the same source. We just know that source energy by many different names.
Well, we have about a minute left in the podcast, and it's probably a good thing, because I have to honestly tell you that last bit that you said, while it was very profound, sounded a little bit like, Astronaut Jane or something, because it was just, the sound was bouncing all over the place. Some of the words just got lost entirely. So it's probably good that we're drawing to a close. The good news is that we're going to be getting the bug out of that Zoom system so we can start using that, because in our testing, that system was really clean. Once we get that echo out of there, I mean, it's going to be great. It was really, really nice, so it's something to look forward to. And we'll also have to look forward, I think, to talking about Abraham's Creative Workshop, because we didn't get there. Well, you were right. We stayed on how can I increase my magnetic power the entire show.
I wonder why I knew that. I didn't know I knew.
I don't know, but you were right. You were right on. But that's okay. It gives us something to do tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to be able to talk about Abraham's Creative Workshop. It's going to be a good way to finish off the week. So not enough time to really say to share and subscribe and share, other than to say subscribe and share if you haven't done it. So before now, get it done, because people who are subscribing are loving it. And Wendy, I'll let you get your little cue in before you leave. How do people reach you if they need to get a little assistance? Preferably not through freeconference.com, so they can understand you.
All to do is go to wendydillard.com, and my contact information is readily available.
Very good. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow, and we hope that you'll join us tomorrow as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.